Huzzah, Rangers! This is Phil Harris here at the Jacks Rangers show. I am joined with Diamond Dave. Dave, how the hell are you?
I am fantastic, Phil. How are you?
Excellent. You're making your triumphant return to the preview here. I wanted to quickly mention the sponsor for this and every single episode of the Jacks Rangers show is Inkify, our good friends at Inkify, custom printing and embroidery since 2010. Inkify provides high quality decorated apparel nationwide, from ordering the apparel to printing, adding a private label, folding, bagging, and fulfillment. They handle it all, so you don't have to. Head over to inkify.com to get started on your order and tell them TJRS sent you, and you'll get 15% off of your entire order. That is a hell of a deal. Dave, I wanted to ask you, what was your festival experience like there for the Metal and Malls?
Yeah, it was pretty good. We were coming in a little bit hot this weekend. We got back from vacation down in DC late the
Mm-hmm.
night before, so we kind of slept in, got as much rest as we could in the morning, and then just hurried to get there by kickoff. So
Yeah.
when we got there, I wanted to take a video just because we got there when it was already pretty hopping, later than I normally would, right?
Right, right.
And it was really fun to enter the venue in that kind of atmosphere, right? It was
Yeah.
crowded, the music was ripping, you could hear the 80s hits all the way up from the parking lot.
Yep.
It sounded great. People were happy. The weather was fantastic as well, a lot nicer, warmer than we expected it to be
Mm-hmm.
when we left. And so it felt really positive coming into the park, and seemed like there's a really good crowd there, enjoying the music, enjoying the metal, and the little drink festival as well. Always
Yeah.
popular.
Of course, yeah. I got to the tailgate. It looked, like a blast. People were, there prior to me coming, but it looked like they had a air guitar contest. Looked like a lot of fun there at the tailgate. And I picked up my Girl Scout cookies from you, so I appreciate that.
That's right.
Yeah, I had to divvy those up between myself and Miss TJRS because I didn't want to keep all of them myself. I got six whole boxes, which probably was a mistake on my part, but I was able to pass off some of those. No big deal. Big numbers at the tailgate once again. I have to say, Ranger John and Ranger Kathy were certainly the best dressed with those outfits. Kathy was even telling me that John, his getup was actually authentic attire. At least some of it was from the '80s, which was kind of hard to believe, but good for him. I kind of considered him more of a straight laced guy, but I guess he was a metalhead back in the day, which is awesome.
That's
Um,
impressive.
yeah, my costume was delivered about 30 minutes before kickoff in Manchester, New Hampshire. So I was a little bummed about that. Definitely affected my spirits because I wanted to dress up like everybody else, but the Amazon package just didn't get there in time, unfortunately. Miss TJRS did hold it down, though, for both of us in her rocking '80s costumes that she got a lot of praise for. There was a Seattle contingent, as always. Nice to see those folks visiting from so far away there in the Pacific Northwest. And at the tailgate, they seem to be enjoying the festival as well. Yeah, just an overall excellent experience. For the folks that haven't been to Fort Quincy yet, make sure that you do come out. If you can, visit the tailgate at the preferred lot up at the top of the hill there. And if you can, bring a gift card of any type of denomination with the money loaded on there and give that to Ranger Cindy, or ask anybody at the tailgate. They'll be able to direct you to the correct person, because we're basically raising funds through gift cards for the players at the end of the season. We do that at the beginning of the season and throughout the season for the end of the season for all the players and all their hard work. Obviously, these guys aren't millionaires, so we try to help them out a little bit with supplemental income, I guess, to a certain extent. Um, but the match, not so great. Not so great from a Free Jacks fan perspective. It was a good game there towards the end. I mean, the Free Jacks tried to get back into it. If we had maybe 20 more minutes, I heard people talking about this, and Dan from Merrimack mentioned this. By the way, we have some fan reactions out on our YouTube channel that I highly recommend people check out. A lot of good breakdowns and insight from the fans that we interviewed on the pitch after the game. A lot of people, not as upset as I would have thought they would be, not as down as I would have thought they would be. A lot of people saying that this was a preview of the final, which I'm hoping for. I've always hoped for a Seattle New England final with the two best fan bases in the league, um, going head toe to toe, hopefully at the end of the season. But it was a good game overall. Obviously, the Free Jacks didn't win that one, and you want them to win, especially at home. That's what really bummed me out, man. Like ultimately, it was a good game. The Free Jacks kind of they didn't look very sharp, but they were coming on there at the end. If we had another 20 minutes, maybe we would have taken the lead and won that game. But it's an 80-minute game, not a 100-minute game of rugby. Um, but yeah, it's just a bummer to see them lose at home. It's not something that we're really used to at Fort Quincy, so it feels devastating, at least to me, when that happens. It's happened twice this season, which I don't love. But hey, man, sometimes it's just the bounce of the ball, right? Like it's just you're going to lose rugby games, and sometimes you're going to lose at home. It's just something that we have to accept. But yeah, let's get over to the actual article written by Michelle Macaron or Macaron. It can't be Macaroni, right? That's just not a name that you hear very often. Has to be Macaron. This is from the Free Jacks website specifically. The New England Free Jacks were back home this weekend in Quincy, Massachusetts after a win against the Houston SaberCats, entertaining a virtual full house. It was a great day for rugby as the Free Jacks battled tough competition, the Western Conference leading Seattle Seawolves. Seattle are leading for a reason and lethal once they get going in attack. Where it's going to be vital that we sustain pressure and physicality at home for 80 minutes to prove that Fort Quincy is a very challenging place to play, stated head coach Scott Matthew before the match. The Free Jacks showed their competitive fire in the match, although the Seawolves won 29-21 in the battle for the 2024 Coffee Cup, which, by the way, it's a different trophy this year. I like the old trophy. It was like a large coffee cup, and now it's just a traditional silverware type of trophy, but nobody asked me my opinion on that.
Makes you wonder what happened to that old
I
trophy.
want to know.
Somebody dropped that big old coffee cup.
I have a feeling that Josh Larson has it somewhere. That coffee snob that he is.
he stashed it away.
He's got it somewhere. Yeah,
the world's largest flat white coming up.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Free Jacks have won this saying 3 out of 4 times, so there is that. But of course, Seattle winning this game. The Free Jacks have taken home the cup, which celebrates Duncan and Starbucks heritage of the two cities. 3 out of 4 previous meetings. The Seawolves have never beaten the Free Jacks at Fort Quincy. That has come to an end, that streak, of course. Before the match, the Free Jacks celebrated both Kyle the Eagle Sakara's 50th cap for the club and Paul Belancana's 50th Major League Rugby appearance. Going into round 8 of the season, Seattle started off strong with a penalty kick from fly half. It says fly back. It's definitely fly half. Mac Mason. A yellow card was handed to Seattle 20 minutes into the first half. Taking advantage, Free Jacks Wayne Vanderbank made a try. Jason Patras added to the conversion, giving the Free Jacks their first lead at 7-3. Using another penalty kick from Seattle, Mason made the score 7-6. Another Mason kick minutes later gave Seattle a 9-7 lead. Going into the break, both teams altered possession, but Seattle's Dan Creel, who has a great charity with his wife for kids with cancer, by the way, gained a clear path on the outside and made a mad dash for a try that made it 14-7 Seattle halftime lead. What was your overall thoughts at the beginning of the match and heading into halftime, Dave?
I felt in the first 20 minutes we gave a couple opportunities to Seattle, and we missed a couple of our own. I think even though it was pretty quiet and the score was just 0-3 at the beginning, I felt like a lot kind of happened there that set the tone. The breakdowns were really intense. 19 minutes, Pryor gets carded for the Seawolves. And then the next thing, like right around minute 20, Vanderbank scores and things are looking really good. The team maybe is settling down. But not long after that, we give up another penalty that's kicked, by Mason. Another one around minute 30. Seattle has the lead. And it just kind of slips away in those first 30 minutes. I think we needed to score in that time. We didn't need so that we wouldn't be trailing quite so much, especially toward the end of the game.
Yeah.
We got a few more opportunities in that second half as it came to an end. We wasted them all. We had a bad pass. We had 2 penalties that we didn't get points off of. You know, we could
Yep.
have gone for points, or we ended up kicking for the line, and then the first one generated a second penalty, and then we kicked for the line again, and then we just missed the line out. We muffed the line out. Looked like a bad throw. Maybe the ball slipped, but just hit Keys right in the chest and like bounced off. There's a knock on another opportunity we had in the last like 5 minutes. We really needed something in especially the beginning and the end of that first half. I think it would have made a big momentum difference.
Yeah.
And instead we just we cough up the ball. Seattle gets down and gets 5 points from us going into the half, so that they go up. And go up by more. They were already up, but that way they double us up, right? It's 7-14.
Right.
And that the 8. If we'd been able to get 3 points there off one of those penalties, maybe the second time we. I would have called for a try too. You want to try.
Yeah.
So I get it, but it just feels like with the glorious gift of hindsight, it's really easy to say,
Yeah.
if we'd just taken 3 points there and eaten some clock, they wouldn't have got that try, and that's an 8-point difference right there. It would have been 10-9 going into halftime. But it was very intense. A lot of errors. We lost 3 of our lineouts in the first half. And just looked sloppy. We weren't executing well, which is really what was the most surprising thing about the whole thing. Losing a close game to Seattle is not surprising, right? Even that happening at home is not super surprising, but it was kind of the manner in which it all played out that really was I don't want to say shocking. I don't want to be dramatic. It's not really my style, but it was really surprising. It was just not the performance that I expect usually. And maybe we come to take that performance for granted a little bit. But that first half especially there were just a lot of moments where you kind of want to throw your hands up and be like, guys, what are we doing out there? We gotta get it together a little bit.
Totally. We're talking about the halftime thoughts and whatnot. But I've got stuff on my mind that I want to express. I guess I'm just gonna have to hold off on it until the end there, and I'll probably forget some of it. But I will say, in terms of what happened at the beginning, the crowd was flat. It was kind of a weird start too, in terms of Bellicana, knocking the ball on almost immediately. I think from the first kickoff there, and from there, it just there was sloppy play, poor execution, as you're describing, mistakes, missed opportunities, which we don't really see a lot of the Free Jacks doing, especially last year. I know last year's a long time away at this point. We're at that midpoint of the season. We've seen some issues with ill discipline and stuff like that has affected us this year. But just the lack of sharpness we haven't really seen all year with knock-ons and stuff like that. You would never predict that he would drop that ball from a kickoff like that, or whatever the situation was. Under the high ball, you expect him to get that 10 out of 10 times, and it didn't fall the way that we wanted it to. And there was a couple times throughout the game that there was a crucial knock on when you would never expect it to happen. And that's just one of those things that I'm sure keeps Scott Matthew up at night. He's drawing up a good game plan, and the players executing poorly is kind of surprising as a Free Jacks fan. But we're bound to have these type of games. I think Dan from Merrimack expressed this during the fan reactions, which, again, for those that haven't seen it, go check it out. It's really, really good stuff from hearing from our fans on the pitch after the game. But, you're just going to drop one. Every once in a while, you're going to have an off day, right? And it's weird to kind of say that as a Free Jacks fan because we're not really used to it. But these things happen. It's just a little bit more surprising for me that it happens at home. We'll get back into it, and hopefully I won't forget everything that I'm wanting to get off my chest. After halftime, the match got physical fast, leading to the Free Jacks, Andrew Quatrin, Kyle Sakara, Cole Keith, and Pierce Von Dadelson subbing out for medical treatment. 10 minutes into the second half, Seattle's Kara Pryor added a try. Conversion failed, upping the visitors' lead to 19-7. Following the play, Seawolves captain Riekert Hadding sprinted down the touchline for a try. Mason added to the kick for a 26-7 advantage. And I think the crowd was absolutely stunned. I was stunned. Now, obviously, this is a Seattle team that is top of the table in the West. And everybody, kind of talks about how the West is so much stronger than the East, and it's been that way for the past 2 seasons at least. But it's still jarring to see a team come into Fort Quincy and go up by 26-7 at home. So the crowd was, I think, really surprised by that and a little shell shocked, to be honest. Back to the article here. With 20 minutes left, the Free Jacks earned a penalty try and an automatic 7 points, pulling them within 26-14. Mason answered with another kick for Seattle, making the score 29-14. In response, the Free Jacks, Caleb Geiger scored his first ever try with Patros, making a conversion, which made the final score 29-21 Seawolves. This is a quote here from the captain, Mitch Jacobson. "We have been chugging really well, but I am disappointed with today's result. We were pushing for that late final, but we are going to take it week by week and continue moving straight." The defending Major League Rugby champions remain in first place in the Eastern Conference with a record of 5-2 and 24 points. The Free Jacks play next Sunday when they visit Rugby FC Los Angeles at 6:15 p.m. Eastern Time. The match will air on NBC Sports Boston. So that is the end of the article. Let me quickly just kind of express how I was feeling with, I think last week we surprised a lot of people with going down to Houston and beating them, and it was pretty handedly. Like, obviously in the first half, they were kind of bullying us from a forwards perspective, but our individual brilliance and excellent stuff by Jason Patros orchestrating the backs helped us beat them pretty handedly in the second half. They got a little close there at the end, but I mean, it was a good victory for the Free Jacks away from home. Then you come back home with a lot of confidence playing Seattle, the Western Conference leaders, and you get a result that is a 2-point defeat or two score defeat, I should say. If you had flipped those, I would easily have taken that, right? Like, you lose it to Houston by two scores, and you win kind of convincingly with Seattle coming back at the end to make it a little bit more of a squeaky bum time situation. You would definitely take that. You got two teams there in that little section of Houston away and Seattle at home. You're playing the best of the best of this entire league, and you score, a 1 out of 1 or 2. In baseball, that's a decent day. You got a hit and you strike out, but that's not bad in terms of baseball. So it's frustrating to a certain extent because it was a home loss, and that's the second one this season. By the way, that DC loss at home looks worse and worse as DC continues to fumble and piss down their pants. With 2 draws and a bad loss this weekend, or last weekend rather. Like, what is happening in DC, man? Like, did they peak too soon in week 2? Like, who knows how that's going to finish out? But that loss at Fort Quincy against DC looks really, really bad from a Free Jacks perspective, considering how bad DC have been lately. What's your overall thoughts of the match and just the second half, Dave?
Yeah, I think it was a real killer when they pounded the two tries through it within like a minute of each other, right around minute 54. Prior scores, and then right after Hadding gets that big break down the wing and he scores, and that's when they're up to 26, and it's just like, oof, took the wind out of the sails. I think that it was really good to see the Free Jacks battle back. So I think it is interesting to look at this game compared to the Houston game. We're playing not just the best teams in the West, but also the biggest teams in MLR, right? Yes. They are big teams. They use size. Houston was not really able to use their size to defeat us directly. We used a lot of ball movement. We were able to be really dynamic and play with a lot of pace, and we really it feels like we wore them out, right? We were able, especially in the last 20 minutes, to just outplay them. Well, Seattle got a lot more production out of their set piece, partially because of more errors we made, right? So we gave them a little bit of an edge in the set piece where they already had an edge. When you play a team that's that much bigger than you, they have a bit of an advantage, and not just bigger. So like I got the best data I could get from the America's Rugby News website. I figured it would be best to get it from the same source, because then if anything
Sure.
was estimated or pulled, it'd be most comparable data. So when you look at the packs, they're like 50 pounds heavier than us, but their
Mm-hmm.
type five, their front row in particular, is just a lot beefier. 40 pounds heavier in their front row. Donald Tafate and Matenga, right?
Yeah.
To Sakara, Kwat, and Cole Keith. So they were just able to use that really effectively the whole match. Those starters stayed in,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a little bit bigger, they're a little bit more experienced, and they just straight up outpowered us in the scrum,
Mm-hmm.
and were able to generate a bunch of penalties off of that, which really denied us the momentum we need to be able to generate from our set piece. It meant
Mm-hmm.
that like if they had handling errors, it didn't matter, because they could just kind of get the ball right back off of us.
Yeah.
Not just get it back, but get it back a few times on a penalty. 5 scrum penalties over the course of the game. You know, out of 13 total scrums, we gave up 5 penalties. You can't give up a penalty more than a third of the time when you pack down and
Yeah.
expect to win, right?
Right.
All 5 times we were just straight up overpowered. So like from a coaching standpoint, what do you tell them to do? I guess I'd tell my guys, get tighter, get lower, like you got to win
Yeah.
the leverage game. The best thing to do probably against a front row that's just bigger than you across the board is to try to get a little bit tighter, get a little bit lower than them, use the height, whatever height advantage you can get. It's not easy to do. It's not like it's checkmate, but just like pretend you're a tick, right? Get down there, burrow down as close to the ground as you can so you can't
Sure.
be dislodged.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
all they can do is get over you, right?
Right.
They can't really go through you. They can only get over you.
Yeah.
And pray, like it's not easy. We can't, it's hard to fault these guys for getting pushed around by the best, probably the best front row, the best pack
Yeah.
in Major League Rugby. I don't think that like it's a foregone conclusion either, though. Like I think what it really speaks to is that everybody wants us, like
Yeah.
especially in Fort Quincy, especially the best teams. When Miami comes into Fort Quincy, they are not like amped, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
probably a little bit like, this is going to be tough. I'm sure they back themselves, believe in themselves. They're
Right.
professional athletes. It's not like they're like, oh, we're going to lose, whatever, guys, we're phoning it in.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they are like railed,
No.
right? When Seattle comes in here, Houston, I'd say the same about San Diego.
Right.
When they come in to Quincy, they're railed. They
Yeah.
want to fuck somebody up. They
Right.
want to ruin our day. And I think Seattle was up for it in a way that Houston wasn't, weirdly.
Yes.
Even though it was a home match for Houston and a away match for them, when you're playing the champions
Yeah.
in their home field and you believe you're the better team, which they
Mm-hmm.
do, and they should. Each
Yep.
team should believe they're better than the team that they're playing, right?
Right.
Like when you really think you're better and they're the champions, but you want to show them up, man, it gets you hyped. And Seattle really came in to play. It was physical.
Yeah.
Our discipline was not great. Theirs wasn't either. They had like 10 penalties. We had, I think, 12 total.
Mm-hmm.
8 in the first half, 4 in the second. First half really killed us, man.
Yeah.
I think it
100%.
really, even though they scored a bunch in the second, and that's where like it felt like the real momentum killer with those back-to-back tries. I think our performance in the first half really hurt us. Overall, the set piece was not great. I went through every line out and scrum and penalty and took notes on all of them.
Just real quick here, Ranger
Yeah.
Tim in the comments of the final score asked us, any way you guys can explain why our set pieces don't seem to work well? I hear you talk about it each week, but as a rugby newbie, it is tough to understand maybe a Scrum 101 or Line Out 101 class. You were talking about the weight differences between us and Seattle's front row specifically and how that affects how things can go. And you talked about the scrum penalties that the Free Jacks gave up in this game, but you're kind of getting into the line out area here, and that was kind of a killer for us as well. The set pieces haven't looked fantastic this season, and we kind of got called out here by Seattle.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at the first half, our first line out, Seattle just straight up stole, right? So
Mm-hmm.
one bad outcome can be, you know, when you're throwing in at the line out, you have the advantage. You got to throw it down the tunnel, right? You have to throw it in between both teams.
Right.
If you don't, if you throw it not straight, that's a penalty. And we gave one of those up later in the first half, right? One
Mm-hmm.
of our line out errors in the first half was that the ball just wasn't straight. That's just, you know, it's a throwing error, and it just turns over possession. But it has to be straight down in between both teams. So you can't really just throw it to your side. The advantage you have is in timing,
Right.
right? You know where you're going to throw it, as in how deep are you going to lob it all the way to the back? Or are you going to throw it, you know, like a frozen rope just straight up to the front jumper's hands as he goes
Mm-hmm.
up? So there are different ways that you can execute that line out, but they all are timed really carefully,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's very choreographed. And as you watch the Free Jacks line out, there's often a lot of fakes,
Yeah.
right? There'll be usually a succession of fake jumps, but not always. Maybe sometimes you just take that first guy right up,
Right.
which is why the fake works. So, you know, any of 3, 4 potential jumps, the guy could actually go up, and then the thrower is going to launch it at the right time so that as the guy reaches the height of his jump,
Mm-hmm.
the ball hits him in the hands, and
Exactly.
then they bring it down, right?
Yeah.
Well, the other team can time that and guess. And so what they're trying to do is get their jump, figure out where the ball's going, and get their jumper up first. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you have somebody who's really tall, you can just lift the guy in the front every time and
Yeah,
try
they
to
can be
slap it
disruptive
down.
based on
Right?
their
You can
height.
just
Yeah.
you can just be really disruptive. You know, Cam Dolan, right? We've
Yeah.
all seen this. Just get
Totally.
Cam up there and let him wave those big sticks around and see what happens.
Exactly.
So one thing that can go wrong is they get in front of you basically, right? They get the timing right, they get the spot right, they get up there and they just get the ball first.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do, but that's what happened in our first lineup. They just got up and they stole it, you know. In minute 26, we didn't throw it straight. And then about 10 minutes later was that line out error on the 5 meter line where the ball just bounced off Key's shoulder. It was
Yeah.
definitely lower than him. So when the ball's that much lower, you know, 3 feet lower than the target, like obviously something went wrong
Yes.
with the throw. So those are the 3 errors in the first half. There were actually a bunch of good line out results in that first half. We turned over 2 of their line outs. One was Larson just got up and stole one of theirs, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just good defensive work from the jumper and the lifting team as well. Obviously, he doesn't get up there alone, but he's the guy who got up there and got hands on it.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, Cole Keith ate the ball in the mall, just managed to find it and get his hands on it, and we got a turnover there. The problem is that like on the resulting scrum from that turnover, because if you lock the ball into the maul, it's going to be a scrum to the team that didn't create the maul. So
Yes.
we get a scrum, but we get blown up on a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Because between minute 4 and minute 15, we give up 3 scrum penalties that really just killed any potential we had in that first half
Yep.
to get anything done. And that's when they're going to be their best. That's when those big guys they got, you know, Big Joe, the hooker is, you know, he's the leading try scorer for the Eagles. He
Yes.
took that record very quickly when he
Sure
joined the
did.
team. He's a powerful runner.
Yep.
He's really good at the back of the maul, which we didn't really see a lot of just by happenstance, but that's another area where he's really strong. He was driving in those scrums and adding his weight. Sam Matinga, the tight head for Seattle, had, I mean, probably one of the best games you're ever going to see a tight head have. When you pull 5 penalties off the other scrum over the
It's
course of the
insane.
game, like
Yeah.
that's an amazing outing for a prop. So what happened is the big guys who really needed to have a great game on Seattle for them to use that advantage, they had great games. They were able to use it to their they were to play to their strength because we were not executing well, which gave them lots of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, they were just able to overpower our scrum. Like as the
Yes.
game wore on, we brought our reserves in, and it like didn't really matter. They were immediately blown up pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the scrums, we got just blown out. Like I said, 5 out of 13 scrums total resulted in a penalty for us. On on the lineouts. We lost 6 of our lineouts in total over the course of the game. That's just too many, guys.
Yeah.
You can't lose that many lineouts. So we had just now, that's for all set pieces, right? So I went through all the set piece and I
Yeah.
categorized the outcomes as like positive for us, negative for us, or just neutral, like expected outcome,
Okay.
right? So if it's a Seattle scrum and they just keep the ball, that's just a neutral outcome. That's an expected outcome,
Sure.
right? But on our put in, if we kept the ball, I scored that as a positive outcome because it's a good thing for us. It's expected, but like
Right.
it's just meeting the minimum expectation, essentially,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so the positive negative was purely from our perspective as New England.
Okay.
So out of for the whole match, 38 set piece moments, right?
All right.
13 total scrums, 25 total lineouts.
Okay.
We had 16 positive outcomes
All right.
out of 38, opportunities, which is not enough. We had 11
No,
distinctly bad outcomes, right?
that's not good.
So that could be a penalty on our scrum, it could be a turnover in our line out, it could be just a throwing error, like something where we go, that was much worse than what would have been our expected outcome. Looking just at our possession, so
Hmm.
only looking at our scrums and our lineouts, we had a 40% scrum success rate, which means 3 out of 5 scrums we screwed up. We lost
Whoops.
the ball, gave up a penalty. Only 2 out of 5 did we keep. That is not good enough. You need
No.
much higher,
Yep.
85%. You want like 90%, really. You want to keep your own ball in the scrum. You have a lot of advantages as the team putting it in. We had a 72% lineout success rate, so better than the
Hmm.
scrums, but still not good enough. You got to
Right.
be 4 out of 5, and it's not just a percentage; it's where we are. Right when we had those lineout opportunities,
Yep.
we executed once. We got a penalty try for a good maul effort. If you want to
Hmm.
know what does collapsing a maul look like, go to minute 67 in the match and watch Seattle collapse that maul, because
Yep.
it is like,
Purposefully. Yep.
it's very often the maul is a mess and you're like, I
Yes.
don't know, okay, I trust the ref. This one's not. I mean, it's a mess, but it's a mess where you see Seattle, like, you just see a bunch of their white uniforms just drop to the deck and then the
Yep.
whole thing falls, and it's like,
Yep.
man, we got to get Encyclopedia Brown on this case. We'll never figure out why that maul that was moving towards the try line collapsed. So I mean, that was a good result. It
Yeah.
wasn't
Totally.
only bad. There were positives in there. We were able to go toe to toe with them a few times and keep our ball, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't just negative outcomes. I want to be like really clear that there were positives in there. We just didn't get enough of those positive
Right.
outcomes. We needed a few more out of each kind of set piece, and we would have been doing better. And what really killed us, I couldn't tell you exactly why, but Phil, we couldn't run them ragged. There was a lot more broken play. Part of it was like we were knocking the ball on
Knocking the
some,
ball on. Yep.
a lot
Hmm.
of scrums. The ball was in touch a lot. We had a lot of lineouts.
Yeah.
And we just were not able to use the speed. We finally saw it peak out a little bit toward the end of the game, right?
Hmm.
Where the
Yep.
fitness that we have, like, okay, they're getting a little ragged. We had 2 different props get like 20-meter breaks, one of which resulted in a try, right?
Yep.
Both of our replacement props had these big runs, which, let me tell you, I'm a big fan of replacement props
Absolutely.
tearing off big runs. I love that. Caleb Geiger scored that try. It was
First
great.
try ever. Yeah. Good for
Yeah,
him.
we had awesome moments, but it wasn't enough, right? We needed
Yeah.
more of that. We needed more of that time where they were kind of gassed. Their big guys had given their all. Sure, they won some scrum penalties, but like, what does it matter if you give up 4 tries in the last 15 minutes? The
Totally.
problem is they didn't quite give up 4 tries. We needed a couple more there,
Yeah.
and we just weren't quite able to make it.
It's just not, we just didn't look sharp, and you
Yeah,
expect us to look sharp because we are normally very sharp. If you touch us, we're going to cut you. That's the kind of sharpness that we have with the Free Jacks, and they were just dull. And it's strange to see that at home. But the crowd was a little dull, so were the Free Jacks on the pitch. And hopefully, it's just a matter of you're playing the best in the league, and you ran out of time. essentially. Like your mistakes didn't help you in the first half. Your decision making when you're going for the corner when you could have taken points hurt you in that first half, and you just ran out of time. They scored
Yeah.
a couple tries in the second half, and there was too much of a point differential between you and them to catch back up by the end of it. And that's really what it boils down to. And it sucks. And I hate it that we lost at home. I fucking hate it, David.
Yeah.
But that's just the reality, man. Tim mentioned another game and no bonus try. Is defending getting better? I think he means defending the
I think in
championship getting
the
worse.
league,
Oh,
I
okay.
think he means like our defense is getting.
Oh, okay.
We're having trouble getting that 4-try bonus point.
Right.
So our defense is getting better and making that harder. That's how I read the question.
Sure.
I think it's a good question. I think statistical analysis would answer it for us. I wonder if there are generally fewer try bonuses being got in MLR this year, not just by us but by teams. If somebody out there has the
James.
data analysis times, yeah, I know we name the maybe. Actually, yeah, that's James Dealey likes answering those kinds of questions.
He sure does.
And he has the data to do it. So maybe we'll pass it over to him from a statistical perspective.
Sure.
Anecdotally, it seems like it. Yeah. We are less often able to cut teams to ribbons, but it feels like the pieces are still there, right?
Yes.
Like it doesn't feel to me like our attack has fallen off.
No.
And I think the defenses have gotten better. The broadcasters called out the edge defense of Seattle in particular as being really good. Mooneyham specifically, just excellent work covering our fast boys out on the outside and kind of preventing us from getting any real productivity on the edge, which suggests teams are figuring out better ways to defend against the kind of attack we bring. We saw some effective kicks. We know when guys are doing that, we can kick back, but they had Mooneyham is fast as hell. He really helped their defense a lot. To have somebody that speedy back there who can cover kicks and makes those like little stab kicks a little less deadly when they have somebody who's kind of like Reese McDonald level fast and can probably just get right over to that ball, and then you have to worry about a run back. So
100%. What we're talking about is parity, right? When we've talked about it since the beginning of the season, and even in the preseason, we recognized that teams were getting better overall based on their signings and their pickups in the offseason. We continued to see that at the beginning of the season with the score lines and how teams were playing us very close. I think what you're talking about is 100% real. Teams want to come into Fort Quincy with its reputation of being a fortress, because it is, and want to knock us off our pedestal. Teams want to play their best game against the champions. That's just the reality of professional sports, or any sport at any level. If you're playing amateur softball, Dan from Merrimack, and you're playing the champion from last year, you're ready to, walk up to the plate with a little bit more swagger, and you're hoping to knock it out of the fucking park because you want to, test yourself against the best. And some teams are going to come into Fort Quincy, Anthem, Charlotte. We wish them well later on in the season, and they're going to get steamrolled because the talent is not there. But when we've got teams that have belief and that have the talent that can compete with the Free Jacks, sometimes they're going to beat us with that belief and that talent.
Yeah,
it sucks, but it is the way it is, man.
Right. My touchstone is always going to be club rugby, right? And I'm thinking, what would my buddies, like what would my friend John Gill, murderous flanker, have said to me as we were warming up for a match against a team like the Free Jacks, right? A really good team. They have stellar reputation. All these guys will cut you to ribbons. They won the championship last year.
Right.
And he'd walk up and he'd say, "Hey, Dave, fuck these guys." Right? Like that would be the attitude, right?
Yeah.
And that's what every team brings. They have that edge. They've got a chip on their shoulder. And man, we saw it. It was physical as hell. You mentioned it a little bit.
Yeah, man.
You want to talk about you want a refereeing note for the match? There was a little bit of whining in the stands. I think just we gave up a lot of penalties, and people are always gonna be like, well, what the hell? Why is the ref calling so many penalties? It's like, well, Good luck telling a guy, 25 minutes into a rugby match because we're doing so many penalties.
Right.
Like that's the problem. The
Yep.
referee is much closer than you or I, and you got to assume they're right about this. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a pretty well called game. But one call I disagree with is the Reese McDonald high tackle on his mark.
Okay.
Right? He called a mark, and I don't even remember who it was on Seattle because it wasn't actually a big deal. They got a hand up around his neck,
I
and
remember this.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
they let go,
Yeah.
right? But they did, like, you could see from the stands that his body got
Exactly.
jerked by the grab. It was a real grab, but the guy realized, like, whoa, no way.
Yes.
Not a big deal. Reese was fine, and so the ref is like, play on, like you're okay. Like he let go, play on. But the next play, I'm not gonna name names in case MLR is listening.
Oh.
I know who though, and you did a good job. Somebody on the Free Jacks just clocks JP Smith on the lineup.
Okay.
Just slams into him after he passes the ball, is late. It's just to hit a guy. It's baseball style retaliation.
Sure.
Right? It's,
Yep.
you got one of our guys, we got one of your guys.
Th-
It was that kind of match. And the criticism I have is that I had the same reaction as the referee when it happened. He's fine, play on. We don't need a penalty. We're not here to call everything we could
Right.
justify calling. We're here to call what's impactful and
And
what's
that was in the
unfair.
face
And
of
that
the
wasn't
fans giving
impactful
him
or
hell
unfair.
too. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
like it wasn't impactful. It didn't create any kind of advantage. It wasn't material. He let go.
Hmm.
McDonald's fine. He apologized. Like, let's just play rugby.
Right.
Except because it wasn't called, we immediately
Right.
retaliated.
Yep. And that's
Right?
going to happen at every level of rugby, by the way. Like you
Right.
basically call numbers. When you're with your team, you're like number 11's playing like an asshole. So
Yep.
something's going to happen to him in a ruck.
Yep. And it's not even the same guy. Like, it was
Right.
like, sorry, like it often is in baseball, different
Yep.
guy.
Right.
Right? Like,
Somebody's going to
it's
get
not
beat. Yep.
important that it's the same guy. It's important that it's one of your guys.
Sure.
And so it was that kind of match, very back and forth. The article, and you mentioned the like three quick substitutions. I know the
Hmm.
one Cole Keith got jacked in the jaw by Pryor. It was one of those, like, after the whistle, right after the
Mm.
whistle, kind of, I mean, likely not malicious, but still high, whether it was intentionally late or not. But yeah, he popped Cole Keith in the jaw. Mitch Wilson, I mean, Pryor's yellow card earlier was for a no arms tackle on Mitch
Hmm.
Wilson. Like, as he was falling, he was already tackled, and Pryor just like put a shot in on him. Yeah, very physical game. Hard to have two of those games in a row. We had a game against
Absolutely.
Houston that was really physical. Then you got to go do it again against Seattle. And they came in and proved their point. I give, as much as I've been pretty critical, and we've talked about it being a tough match to watch. I give a lot of credit to the players. It's not easy to soldier through a match like that either. I mean, I can tell you, I've got my
Totally.
ass kicked a lot worse than that in scrums in my life, and it sucks. Nobody
Yeah.
is more aware than the players who are in those scrums that are getting
Hmm.
obliterated, that, like,
Yep.
it ain't good and it needs to be better.
Right.
Just like, trust me,
Yeah.
they know. They've got a tough task. They've got some mechanical stuff to fix, I imagine. Seattle was just really in sync. There's one scrum where you can, like, watch their leg work. Their timing is really good. They're just a great scrummaging unit. Like, it's beyond just like front row weight imbalance. They are just a very effective scrummaging team, and it was really on display. Is kind of what you get when you have that much of an edge on a team in an area. They really had a scrum edge on us.
100%. And I'll just say that Colonel Kenny made a very excellent point, as he generally does to me in the stands. He said that if we had played Houston and then LA and then Seattle, I think we would have been better off. But playing these back to back best of the West teams like this,
Yeah.
it called up to us a little bit, and the sharpness was missing. And we had some knucklehead decisions in the first half, some penalties that didn't go our way, but ultimately is our fault, right? And it didn't work out. We ran out of time. There was a comeback on, but ultimately the clock is the ultimate decider of the game, and we just ran out of time. Who knows what would have happened if the game was 100 minutes? It's 80 minutes. it is what it is. It's a loss at home. It sucks. We have to move on. I wanted to say musket-sized pants tent is Connor Mooneyham, as you mentioned earlier, the number one first overall pick in the collegiate rugby draft ever in MLR, 6 foot even, 210 pounds, wing from Rockland, California. Great try scoring ability, good speed, and a lot of competitiveness on the pitch. He has some injury issues, though, throughout his career, but a great addition to the Seawolves squad for sure. Originally, he was the Dallas first pick, and then he went to Austin, and now he's with Seattle. Just a really, really good player, fast as hell. And he definitely caused us some problems on defense for sure when we were trying to get some stuff going with our backs. What you got?
I remembered the other thing I was going to say, which probably piss off a few people, because it pissed off a few people when Pedro Martinez said it 20 years ago.
Let's hear
21 years ago, whenever. But sometimes you just have to tip your hat, right? I'm not gonna call anybody my daddy,
right?
But like sometimes you just got to tip your hat, right?
Man.
Like he said that after a game where he got rocked by the Yankees, and like Pedro Martinez is still a great pitcher, man. He's still a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
But sometimes Hall of Famers get rocked, and to me, this is a tip your hat game. Seattle came in, they played really well. We made mistakes, and they capitalized. They were really ruthless, and they clamped down, especially toward the end of the match when we usually open teams up. They dug deep. They bled a little bit, but they stopped the bleeding, and they were able to keep us fended off. I think they played a really good match. I'm not going to prognosticate about potential finals. We'll get there if we get there,
Sure,
But
sure.
I mean, it's certainly a possibility. We're the top two teams in the East and the West. So
yeah, man, for sure,
it's an open conversation.
There was definitely some comments in the fan reactions about, I'd rather lose this game in the regular season than in the postseason. Makes a ton of sense. A lot of I was very surprised by the fan reaction. I said that earlier. I was just, I was feeling down and hurt, and a lot of people were just like, "Hey, man, these things happen. We'll see you at the next game." And I was like, "Okay,
yeah,
excellent." Let's move over to Inkify MVP. I'll go first. It is difficult to pick an MVP in a loss. I've said that many times on here, but I'll give one guy a little bit of props here tonight. Props highlighted. Caleb Geiger coming off the bench and scoring a prop breakaway try, rumbling, fumbling, and stumbling his way to the try zone and dotting it down for his first ever career try. Awesome stuff to see. He was just on the show a few weeks back. Awesome guy. Happy for him. What a crazy rugby origin story that is. 2 years ago, he was drinking in a bar in Colorado, and now he's a USA Eagle playing for the Free Jacks. Crazy story, man.
Yeah.
What you got?
I have to go with Wayne Vanderbank.
Yes, sir.
He had an amazing match. He did it all. He tackled, he jackled, he scored. He had 129 running meters. He had 16 ball carries. He had 11 tackles, which is pretty high for a back. He had a really phenomenal game. He's doing everything he can to keep the Free Jacks in these kinds of matches. I didn't get a chance to talk about how awesome he was in Houston, which was awesome. So he said, well, you know what, Dave? You know what I'll do? I'll have another awesome match so that you can talk about me. He really performed well. I continue to love the fact that he absolutely refuses to stop moving his legs in contact.
It's the best thing ever.
He gets more meters after contact, like with two guys hanging on him, than most forwards do. It is really, really impressive. I don't know if it's just like a tackling style thing. People tackle him different because he's a center. Probably he's faster, so you have to, right?
Yes.
Harder to stop all his momentum head on like it would be for like a forward crash ball. And he's like, all right, well, you hit me at an angle, so I'm just going to keep going for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 meters before I actually go to the ground. That's my guy, Wayne Vanderbank.
Same here, man. Like, I'm so happy for that guy. Like, every time I see him, I saw him last year, and obviously, he had an injury-plagued season, and he still had a smile on his face. You could tell that, like, he wasn't happy with the situation, not being able to play because of injury and stuff like that. But one of my favorites on this team, very, very soft-spoken guy, doesn't bring a lot of attention to himself, but one of the best players in MLR right now. Like, you have to say that. Like, this guy, I don't think they keep track of this like they do in the NFL. yards or meters after initial contact, his has to be through the roof, man. He has to be leading the league. You can't stop him. I say it every time in the stands, like, there goes Wayne again. You can't stop it. I say that every fucking game in the stands, but it's true. Like, watch him move his legs. That's what you're taught in rugby. Like, when you get contact, keep your legs churning and good stuff will happen. But he never forgot that, old Wayne Vanderbeek. And one thing I would love to do, if this is the only thing that happens that is positive for my influence here, when something Wayne does really well, let's get the Wayne's World party time, excellent chant going in the stands, like Wayne's World from SNL. Hell yeah, man!
Get the audio guys to hit the stinger.
That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be so good.
Wayne's
World party time, excellent. All right, we are 50 minutes into our review, so we're gonna get out of here and end this particular episode in 3, 2, 1. Huzzah!